Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Surfside Recovery Podcast. My name is Brian Licata, and we just wanted to let you guys know that if you or anyone is struggling with addiction, to please reach out to Surfside. You can give us a call at 609-709-4205 or visit us at surfside.org and all of our social media platforms.
Good morning, Mr. Ian. How are you doing today?
I'm surviving.
This is probably the sleepiest podcast we've done in a long time.
It is, yeah.
I think me and Ian both just rolled out of bed. But happy Sunday morning to everybody. How we doing out there? Once again, my name is Brian Licata with Mr. Ian Koch here for another episode of the Surfside Recovery Podcast. I think we're on episode like 50-something. 52, maybe 53. It's pretty cool. I was thinking about this morning. I don't think I've done too many things this consistently ever in my entire life.
Hopefully you'll get there one day.
Well, we're here now with this.
Yeah, right.
So we don't have a guest this morning, but one thing I was kind of I guess it's been on my mind a little bit recently. Was like the importance of being adaptable to situations, right? Like especially now with like what's going on in the world, like now even more so it's important to have like kind of like backup plans and be able to kind of like roll with the punches. I think that's something that's really important for kids when they're newly sober, but also like further along in life.
Yeah, there's a line in one of the stories in the back of the big book, and it says, our expectations are inversely proportionate to our serenity. Mm-hmm. And I think there's, you've known me for a while now, and I'm a planner and I'm a doer, and I find comfort in taking action versus just waiting. And I think that for me, like let's say I have a new project or a new idea or something like that. And, by the time I'm talking about it out loud, I've already been thinking about it for a significant period of time. And then by the time I'm talking about it out loud, like I'm also planning plan B and plan C and plan D. I always joke around with my wife about, Surfside and just like, the whole deal. Like when we initially, like one of the reasons when I started Surfside, like one of the reasons we picked the location we were in is like, if all else fails, right? Like if everything goes to hell, we have a property on an island that we could potentially rent out. It's just a rental property. Mm-hmm. So, and I think that is like, in terms of like Surfside not working, that's like somewhere around plan D.
Right.
Even. There's like, and there's some comfort in that, like I when all the COVID stuff started, I talked to, the Surfside leadership team, which is, our program director and director of outreach and recovery coaching. And, I said, okay, like, this is plan B. If this doesn't work out, we're not at plan B yet, or, anytime soon, but this is what plan B looks like. So, let's just keep that in the back of our minds, because everything may shift, and, mm-hmm. and it's nerve wracking, right? It's especially right now, like when there's not a clear, like Surfside has never been it's not a clear business model. Like there's a lot of variables. And quite honestly, those variables are because the addiction treatment industry is shady. Like the people I literally had an executive director of a detox facility, a 40-bed detox facility, tell me this week that his therapists are not competent enough to refer to Surfside.
What does that mean? What, dude?
They all have master's degrees, but they're not competent enough to refer to Surfside. Well, because what it means is it's not as simple as just saying, "Hey, they take your insurance. This is where you're going to go."
Right.
There's we're asking for a long-term commitment. We're asking for family involvement. We're asking for, the family to commit financially to support the person while they're in early recovery, doing step work and all this stuff. So it's not as simple as, hey, you're just going to go here. And apparently his therapists aren't competent enough to be able to refer to us.
Do you think this is just something that popped into my head. Do you think having like those type of requirements on a program, instead of just being like hey, insurance is this, leads to getting like a certain type of clientele sort of thing? Like you kind of weed out some BS doing it that way.
I mean, yeah, we weed out some BS, but and unfortunately not everybody can afford, Surfside or other self-pay programs. And, so there's a lot of variables that makes it that way. But the truth is, like, at the end of the day, like, everything we're doing, unfortunately, is not billable by insurance, right? Like, teaching guys how to write resumes and apply to jobs and show up to work and budget and cook and, go experience new activities, as much as we would all like that to be reimbursable by insurance, it's just not.
Right.
So, but my point is that, like, the industry is all based on, who have you sent, what kind of business have you sent me, right? Like, if we were sending, 3 people to that detox a week, it'd be a whole nother story. They would figure out how to make their clinicians smart enough to refer to us.
Right.
But the truth is we're not, and we're not going to, because, we don't advertise as primary treatment. So we're not necessarily getting the volume of calling that they want.
Right.
So it's like, I was okay prior, and I was having this conversation with someone the other day, like, prior to March, like, I was pretty confident and felt good, like, where we were going. And even though there's always like a bit of uncertainty, like, where we were going and what we were doing. But now I'm back to where we almost were when we opened, which is like a very uneasy feeling. And, and it's why it's so important that, like, people who believe in what we do recommend us to friends and family. Like, the people who refer to us believe in our program because they've seen the good that we've done, either personally or professionally. It's not about how a lot of the industry is, which is like, what are you doing for me?
Yeah, man. I mean, I get, because I talked to Nick and people call me all the time just because they knew that I went through and I did well, like, just, friends, family, people who know somebody who knows me, sort of a thing, which is cool.
Yeah. And it's so back to the idea of, like, planning and having, plan B and being adaptable and things like that, right? Like, our serenity is inversely proportionate to our expectations, like I think there's always this ability, right? Not an ability, a need to be level-headed in all situations, and I'll give you 2 examples. We had, our guys who've not been able to really obtain solid employment over the years. Like, when they start looking for work, they hand in an application and the person's like, "Oh, I'll give you a call next week." Well, what they hear is, "I've got the job." And right. So then a week goes by and they don't, and ideally we catch this and can work them through this. But, all of a sudden they don't, they're not looking for work because they're going to get a call next week. Right. They're not, their serenity right? Their expectations are all in that one basket, right? And then they don't get that call next week, and then all of a sudden they're depressed and back to their self-esteem issues
Mm.
and all this nonsense. And it's just like, you can't put all your eggs in one basket, and you've got to consistently be fluid and mobile. And, same thing that like you did recently, for those who don't know, Brian is shifting gears and got accepted a pretty decent position to a golf course.
Mm.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thanks, man.
And, and I think that's really important, like even though your digital business that you really love and is your passion, you understand that right now that may not be feasible the way the market looks, right? The way that businesses are closed. So now what,
Yeah, and that's kind of where the conversation, like the idea sprang up. I've been working on the golf course since I guess the end of March. I think I started March 25th. And the
Yeah.
cool thing I like about that job is when you're doing like landscape maintenance and stuff like that, you have a lot of time to think, because you're just, some days I'll be on like a mower or a tractor or something for like 8 hours. So, if you're not listening to music, you get to just like think and think and think and think and think, which is really cool because
So some people that's dangerous. Some people it's incredibly cathartic.
Yeah, I like it. I mean, most of the time I'll listen to like a podcast or music or something like that. But then sometimes I'm just like, you know what? Like I turn it off and I just want to kind of not like get in my head in a good way,
Sure. Yeah.
But
Yeah. I
like,
mean, I'll drive for hours, hours and hours and hours, and never even put the radio on.
I remember I remember you telling me
Yeah.
something when I was maybe 3 or 4 months sober. And I don't even think you were telling me. I think you were like speaking at the house or something like that. And you were saying how one of your favorite things to do is you just get in the car and then just drive without the radio on. And I remember thinking to myself, I'm like, there's no way I will ever be able to do that.
Yeah. I wouldn't say it's like a favorite thing to do, but it's like sometimes, it's like I get in the car. I don't like the music is more like frustrating because of whatever. I said to my wife last night at like 8 o'clock, like, I need a calculator. She's like, what in the world are you thinking about right now? And it's just like, it's not like an obsession. It's just like my mind is processing because I'm always trying to look for strategies,
Right.
right? Ultimately right now to keep people their jobs. And,
Right.
it is what it is. So, the other story I wanted to say about, these uncertainties. So I talked to a family last night and, their son did really, really well for a significant period of time. He had, say, 8 or 9 months sober, and has been struggling for a significant period of time. I think he's now in his third treatment center over the course of maybe 2 months, give or take. And they're talking about, like they kept saying that like they would cut him off, but then they would pay for groceries and an Oxford house and, all this stuff, but tell him that they're cutting him off. And, so they called us and they're like, well, what do we do? Do we cut him off? Do we bring him home? And I said, look, like a lot of times there's not a clear right answer. And I
Right.
explained why we encourage them or in not necessarily us, but why it is encouraged to cut people off. And I said, it's a basic economics game, right? Like if you buy somebody $100 gift card and pay their rent, they can take that $100 gift card, sell it in the hood for $50 cash. They can buy drugs and they don't have to pay their rent. If you cut them off completely and they have $50, they've got to figure out, like, does this go towards rent? Does this go towards a hotel? Does this go towards drugs? Does it go towards food, gasoline? Right? Like it's an economics. If you bring them home and they start using again, right? If they get $20 and they're living at home, they obviously don't need to pay for rent. They obviously have a full refrigerator full of food. So it's not that we're when the advice of kick them out, cut them off is given, it's not from the standpoint of don't love your son or daughter. It's from the standpoint of economics, right? anything of value that they're getting without working for can contribute potentially to them using or relapsing. So this family was kind of like caught, like, he's in a rehab. Do we just tell him he's got to figure it out, or do we bring him home?
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, look, I can't make that decision for you. Like, I think you're looking at two really shitty decisions,
Right. Yeah, definitely.
And at the end of the day, you have to live with the decision you make. It doesn't mean you can't plan for another decision. And I think they finally have realized that what they've been doing, which is, blindly throwing, not necessarily even blindly, but throwing money at this young man for, this, that, and the other thing. Yeah, I think that the situation is that very much so. They got to do something different, and we always have to like live with those decisions we make.
Yeah. On a couple of things you said, I mean, I know that's finally when I started to turn a corner is when my parents did that. When they kind of completely cut me off, even just from like talking to me, that's when I started to straighten out. But as soon as they, I guess, noticed that there was some like actual drive and determination to get better, they came right back in. So it wasn't like, basically my mom would say, if this is what you're doing, like I'll love you, but like I can't be a part of your life.
Sure. Yeah.
But then as soon as I, started to turn the corner, back she came. And it was slowly, but, eventually, the relationship mended. But, that's when I started to do well, when it turned like that.
Yeah.
Do you remember me calling you from the phone at Seabrook?
Yeah. Yeah, because it was at night, and it was the Seabrook number, but it was the one that shows up on the phone, and it was at night. I was like, oh, I wonder who this is. And I'm like, does your counselor know that you're calling? You're like, nope.
Yeah,
I want to leave tomorrow. I was like, oh, interesting.
Yeah, I guess, but getting back to the the topic that I brought up about adaptability. One thing, I think me and you were pretty similar in the fact that like, we both try to plan and we both try to execute. My mother really instilled that stuff in me that like, when she would go to the grocery store, she had a list, and it was kind of itemized by like where it was in the store, like
Sure.
vegetables over here,
which
dairy.
Which like every mother does. Yeah.
Yeah. But then she had like another page that was for like stuff at Produce Junction. Like I kind of just like learned that stuff from her at like a young age. And when I started my video business, basically what I did was I worked backwards from how much money it's going to cost me, right? Like I ran all the numbers and said, this is how much the equipment is going to cost. I had this is how much the equipment costs. This is how much it's going to cost me to operate per month. And, what do I need to make in order to be able to do this? So I figured out what I needed to make in monthly contracts to be able to make that happen. So, and for the first, I don't know, I started in August. So August, September, October, November, December, January, February, March. It's for 8 months. Like I was turning a profit each month, and it was working. But yeah, when this coronavirus thing hit, like I lost one of the contracts I had in Atlantic City. Like I easily could have gone like another way about it. I could have just like, dug my head in the sand and been like all depressed and
yeah,
why is this happening to me? Blah, 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 blah. And I was like sad for maybe a day. But then like I realized it wasn't anything that I did, it wasn't like I was running a shitty business and people were dropping me because I wasn't giving them like good work.
Yeah.
So I just had to like pivot, I had to pivot. I'm like, okay, well, what else do I know how to do? Well, I know how to work at a golf course. So I started making some phone calls. A good friend of mine is running a course out in Egg Harbor Township. I hit him up and literally like a week later I was working there.
So are you now the guy to talk to about Surfside getting golf over there?
What, like playing?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
For some swapping of community service.
It's like a super private, like high-end private course.
We're high end.
I don't think so.
Do you remember, you weren't around? I have a funny story. So we have this, relationship with the local course, or one of the local courses, and we took the guys over, and this is, I think, when like Nick was still in the house, and it was right before your time, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
This kid Patrick and a couple of the other guys, they're over there at their course. Well, they all take their shirts off.
Oh, really?
So they're all hitting golf balls, and they're all, got their shirts off, and they're sun tanning, and like strutting around, and the manager or whatever of the course comes flying up in the golf cart to Tim Robinson. It's like, "You've got guys over here, and none of them have their shirts on." It was like a big problem. But they didn't know, quite honestly. They were never, they were never at like a professional course before, and never thought that they couldn't take their shirts off. Like, "Oh, we're outside, whatever. It's the summer.
It's hot. It's hot. We'll just take our shirts
off."
off.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and I think with this adapting thing, like, I think we announced, that we had a partnership, that Surfside had a formal partnership with a local CrossFit gym. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's gone south. You know what I mean? And it's gone south. Me and you have talked about it. It's gone south very, very quickly. And our initial plan was to open something under Surfside, that's for Surfside, but for the community as well. And,
right.
And now we're back to that, and, we tried it one way and it didn't work. So, okay, let's go this other route. And, it's kind of a shitty time to think about opening a gym.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also, if you think about it, really, it's like in one sentence, not 15 minutes ago, I'm talking about like potentially shifting our business model if things don't last. But I'm also talking about, right, potentially opening, a strength and conditioning, CrossFit strength and conditioning gym
mm-hmm.
in the exact same moment, and, but I think that's what this is all about, is like, right, like our serenity is inversely proportionate to our expectations, right? Like, mm-hmm. It doesn't say, like, we're not, like, I'm not like, if one thing fails, it doesn't mean life is over. Mm-hmm. Right? It means we have to adapt or die, and in this gym, like, either way we slice and dice, basically, like, if we ever shifted the Surfside business model, it would be less of a cost. We would still do like case management and a bunch of that stuff, but keep the sober living piece. But still, we would want the gym. I mean, the gym is like a critical piece for people who, get sober. And this, what we're doing is we're gonna, we're gonna operate. It's gonna be called Saltwater Athletics, CrossFit Strength and Conditioning, and it's gonna be, a DBA of Surfside, and it's gonna be
what?
Doing business as. So it's going to be, going to be part of Surfside Recovery Services.
Got it.
As a 501c3, which is the nice thing. So, we'll be able to keep the costs down, but yet have like a facility. We'll do memberships. We'll be able to do some like discounted memberships for people early in recovery, and, and ideally do some like community events there and some fundraising and things of that nature. And, really kind of use it as a hub for, some healthy activities in early recovery,
Mm-hmm.
And I think that either way you slice it and dice it, like, it's worth trying. Like, this has been right. Something we've been talking about as, like, with the board of directors and as an agency for quite some time, and I thought, right, like, quite honestly, I took the easier, softer way. Right. Like, I led the business in a relationship with this other company, and it just didn't, it's not going to work for the long term, so we'll be there until we get this other building open. And the way we've talked about it is like, even if it doesn't work, which I think the numbers, quite honestly, in terms of memberships are very modest, and I think it'll be okay. Mm-hmm. But even if it doesn't work, like, at least we can say we tried. And
Yeah,
I
of
think
course.
a lot of this, like being able to adapt is like, like Michael Jordan said something about like failure is one thing, not trying is a whole nother story, and I think that's what we're really talking about. It's like we can't sit around and wait for people to fix our lives, right? Like we can't sit around and just expect things. We've got to put one foot in front of the other. We've got to work hard. We've got to be able to take action, you know and whether that's you're an alcoholic in recovery or a drug addict in recovery or not, waiting for people to come in and save the day, like the government with their stimulus money and all this nonsense. Like I get it, it's good, it's important, we need it, but like wait, like, oh, I'm waiting for my check for what? So you can like go get a tattoo? Like people are hiring, like jobs are, like people are hiring right now.
Yeah,
You
I
know what
took
I
that check
mean?
and I immediately turned it and paid down debt I had with it.
Yeah, I mean
Like, yeah,
that's
because I'm
the
working,
idea.
I took it and I put it towards
Yeah,
debt.
that's the idea. And like that PPP thing, we applied for that 3 times now. Like I didn't just wait the first time. The third time I applied, I started to actually get some traction.
Right.
Like who knows if it's coming through or not, but you know, you can't just sit around and wait, and yeah.
So there was something simple that you said. I want to just say this real quick. So, all my years putting, work in at like golf courses and landscape companies and stuff like that, like I learned how to speak Spanish, like pretty good,
Yeah.
like better than the average, person who just, tries to speak. And the one thing I noticed is that, um, the reason I did so well is because I wasn't afraid to sound stupid when I was speaking, right? And
Mm.
it kind of goes to like how you appear in front of other people. And I notice, on both sides, like the white guys I worked with versus the Hispanic guys I work with, the people who aren't afraid to sound dumb, like and try to pronounce the words and like pronounce them wrong, like they don't figure it out. Like there's a lot of guys that I've worked with who have been in the US for 20 years and they can't speak English very well, and that's because they never really tried, right?
Yeah.
And then same thing, vice versa. Like,
Yep.
white guys who've been working with Spanish guys for 15 to 20 years can't speak it at all because they're afraid that they're not going to be able to. And like a simple thing like that is like you just have to try. Like what I do is when I'm working with these guys and I'm trying to learn a new word, I have like I hold it in my hand or whatever it is, have them pronounce it, then I say it like 30 times until I get the pronunciation right, and then boom, I remember it, and that's kind of how it goes. So I mean, it's like everything like that. Like if you're not going to give it a shot, like you're never going to do shit. You know, simple enough.
I read something, I think 2 days ago, about motivation versus discipline,
Mm-hmm.
and somebody was saying, or what, I don't know where I saw it, but it was something about like, forget motivation, who gives a shit, it's all about discipline.
Mm-hmm.
Motivation comes and goes, but discipline is about waking up every day at the same time without excuses. Discipline is going to the gym when you're too tired and you would rather go home. Discipline is when you're walking down the aisle in the grocery store day after day, you skip the aisle with the ice cream or whatever it may be, right? Like,
I love ice cream.
so do I, but it's being disciplined versus, right, like the discipline to practice versus like the motivation, like today I'm going to learn Spanish, and then like that motivation disappears
Mm-hmm.
shortly after, right? The discipline to continue to be a part of recovery even when you don't feel like it,
Mm-hmm.
you know. um
I was listening to a podcast yesterday, and it was a Joe Rogan podcast, and he had this former Navy SEAL on there who turned author, and the Navy SEAL guy who wrote a couple books. Someone told him when he started out is the only difference between a published author and an unpublished author is the unpublished author stopped, and the published author kept going. So
pretty simple. What do you think? I think that does it.
Yeah, I think we're good.
Wrap it up.
Have a good quarantine week. What are we going into 7 or 8?
Dude, I don't know. I was talking to Goldman last night and I was like, dude, how long has this been going on for? He's like, I don't know. 6 or 7 weeks.
We're going into week 7 or week 8.
So I kind of do it from when the casino shut down. That's what I'm trying.
When was that?
I don't know. When did it happen?
I know. I wasn't in quarantine? Was I in quarantine? I was not in quarantine for my birthday, which was the 5th of March.
Oh yeah, it was a little bit after.
It was like a week after that, because I know I was like on freak out mode. Yeah. I think the gyms shut down like the 16th.
The 16th, yeah, okay, so it was right around St. Patrick's Day. Yeah, it was right around then.
Yeah.
The golf courses are open, state parks are open, the beaches are open.
Some beaches are open. Boardwalks though are not.
The boardwalks aren't, yeah.
And beaches, you're not allowed to like sit down.
You got to walk.
Still can't do groups,
which I don't like.
We're getting somewhere, but it's starting to get crazy, man. Like people are starting to get pissed, and I get it. You know.
Yeah.
People are starting to get tired of being at home, and people want to get back to work. And you know, it's funny. I was, and we can end with this. I was maybe. I was under 2 months sober, and I basically got fired from the job I had when I got sober. I was working and whatever, and I went to a noon meeting and I raised my hand and I shared, and I was all upset. And this old timer, this guy Dennis, I actually don't even think he was an old timer. He had like 7 or 8 years at the time. He like leaned in behind me and he was like, "Listen, kid," he's like, "whenever you have a job, you're not going to want a job. Whenever you don't have a job, you're going to want a job." He's like, "so you might as well just enjoy the moment and go find another job."
Really funny.
You know, and it's the truth, right? It's like nobody ever wants their job until they don't have a job. They're like, "oh, I can't wait to work," right? It's like Surfside guys. They come into Surfside and they want a job so desperately. They get to phase 3 and they got to go look for work. And they're like, "oh, can I go to afternoon activity today instead?"
Yeah.
You know, it's just like, it is what it is. So
that's life.
All right. Enjoy quarantine week, whatever. Again, if you guys are looking for help, if you know people looking for help, please don't hesitate to recommend us. We'll ideally get people situated and get them where they need to be. So,
peace out. Until next week.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
As always, if you or someone you know is struggling, please reach out to Surfside. You can give us a call at 609-709-4205 or get us on the web at surfside.org.